It's official. Hugh Freeze has been fired from his position as Auburn's head coach. Let's discuss what it means for the current situation at Auburn and the future of the program on this live edition of the Uptempo podcast. Yes, sir. Good afternoon to the Auburn family. Welcome back to a lot of you guys that were with us earlier in the morning. We said, hey, we might be having to come back on here in a little bit. We were kind of hopeful that that was going to be the case. And here we are. The announcement has come through. Hugh Freeze has been fired as Auburn's head coach. See a nice crowd starting to file in here. Please like the video, sub to the channel if you have not done that yet. So Hugh Freeze is out. DJ Durkin named the interim head coach. Hugh Freeze, as Auburn's coach, was 15-19 overall, 6-16 in the SEC, 1-12 versus ranked opponents, and a pathetic 9-9 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Like we talked about this morning, like we've been talking about for a long time on this show, obviously unacceptable, obviously beneath the standard of what Auburn should try to hold itself to be. You know, just as we kind of walk back through why we're here right now. I think it starts with you can't be bad at what you're supposed to be good at. If Auburn was losing games under Hugh Freeze in shootout fashion, 35-32, 41-38, things like that, and you could point to it and say, all right, well, we have an offensive-minded head coach. We're scoring points, but the defense is lacking. I mean, you see that in a guy like Lincoln Riley, or I know he's made strides at USC to try to fix that, but historically that's followed him, and that happens to guys. You see defensive-minded guys struggle to get the offense going, right? Because they're so focused and their knowledge is on that particular side of the ball. In Hugh Freeze's case, his side of the ball was the problem. It was a side of the ball that he's not involved in the defense, that was thriving. He made these comments in one of the post games recently. I can't remember which game it was. May have been last night. They all the post game pressers from all these losses kind of fade together at this point because it's the same stuff over and over. But he said something recently where he was asked about the accountability on the defensive side of the ball being different than the offensive side of the ball. And I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but he said something to the effect of, we've looked into that. We've talked to the defensive coaches about that, and we're kind of trying to do some of the stuff that they're doing. And then you had people that had been at practice in the media that were observing practice make mention of the offense has started to stretch the way the defense was stretching before practice in a much more organized fashion instead of all kind of goofing off, doing their own thing in separate position separate position groups and all that kind of stuff. So when you hear things like that, you got to wonder, like, okay, just how disorganized is it? What all does that entail, right? Like, if you're hearing a story like that, you can probably assume, well, if you can't get the stretching right, if the practice itself looks disorganized, then what in terms of game planning, forming a game plan, and then implementing that game plan? What leaks through the cracks there? How disorganized is that process? Come to find out, not in quarterback meetings a lot of time. A guy that when he got to Auburn said he developed quarterbacks, never developed one. We saw Robbie Ashford. We saw Peyton Thorne. We saw Hank Brown. We saw Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels. I think we saw Holden Garner in the Music City Bowl. So, like, that never happened. And when you were here for 3 seasons, Deuce Knight was the first one that was like, that you recruited out of high school that everyone looked at and said, okay, there's the future. And he's never going to get a chance to even coach Deuce Knight. So the lack of development at the quarterback position, the mishandling of the quarterback position really stands out. You know, you go back to him naming Peyton Thorne the starter because he's pressing in practice. That was wild. That was a wild statement to make when he made it. And it certainly raised concerns because we were all thinking, man, we've never heard anything like that. I've never heard a guy win the starting QB position because he's pressing. That certainly is a weird. And I kind of thought that, like at the time, because we were new, right? He'd only been the coach for a couple of months. At the time, I thought maybe he was kind of like misspeaking or trying to play some mind games or something. I didn't know. It sounded weird, and I said on the show that sounds weird, but I didn't really like take it serious. And then as I watched him handle quarterbacks and how he handled that position group over time, I realized that he was being serious. You go back to the Ole Miss game in his first year, Auburn's driving the ball with Peyton Thorne. He's switching out Robbie Ashford, then the drive stalls, like just trying to get way too cute. And I think that's a big part of it too. You try to get too cute a lot of times on offense. You went away from abandoning the run. That storyline has not been brought up as much today because of how versus Arkansas and versus Kentucky these last few weeks, he decided to stick with the run, but he had entered the Arkansas game on the hot seat. And a lot of the reason why he had got to that point in his third season was his refusal to run the football. Concerning comments like last year in Lexington, when he said in a game Auburn won where Jarquez Hunter runs for over 250 yards, he says, well, I hated to run the ball into the box like that, the way they were stacking it. I want to throw. I want to throw when the numbers say that. It didn't matter how many guys Kentucky had in the box that game that night in Lexington. They weren't stopping Jarquez Hunter, so who cares? I heard that, and I'm like, what? It wasn't enough for Hugh Freeze to win. He wanted to win his way. I went and got these weapons. Look at what I put in the NFL from my time at Ole Miss. Watch me throw the football down the field. This is what I do. It never came. It never came. And it's frustrating. And I don't know if you really could have seen it coming to this extent. And I know there was a lot of people out there that didn't believe in the Hugh Freeze hire. If you're one of the people that didn't believe in the Hugh Freeze hire just because of football reasons, then I'd tip my caps to you and props to you. A lot of people don't like him for reasons outside of football. I don't really traffic in that here. But ultimately, it looks outdated. It looks like Jimbo did at the end of his time, right? It looks like a guy where the game has just passed him by. And the only, the thing that was so troubling to me, that was so frustrating about the continuing to pound the table on we're close, is that you were close because of the defense. You were close because of DJ Durkin, and Ron Roberts provided him a solid defense in year one. And what DJ's given him the last two been more than enough to win. And Auburn defense hasn't given up more than 24 points in a game this year. Their numbers in the SEC are elite. Sure, there's some things here and there we can nitpick, explosive plays, third and long. The end result is how many points they allow. TJ Durkin hasn't allowed teams to put a lot of points on the board since he's been the defensive coordinator at Auburn. That's the only reason these games are close. Which leads me to my next point, the culture issue, the inability to win close games. What do we have as examples? Year one, the Cal game on the road, you pulled out a 14-10 win, I believe it was. Your offense performed terribly. Your defense got you a big play that put you down there, but you found a way to win that game. Cool. A&M last season, you probably shouldn't have gone to 4 overtimes, being up 21-0 at home, but you did. The offense fell apart. And then what we saw last night. So this is something that just had to be. It had to happen. It had to happen. So the Arkansas game. I'm sorry, I lost what game I was saying. So you have the Arkansas game last week. You have the Cal game the first year, right? And the A&M game in year two. So those are 3 games. Those are 3 close games that I could think of off the top of my head that Auburn pulled out. But the majority of what it was under Hugh Freeze was last night. was the Missouri game, was the Georgia game, both home Georgia games, because you had a great opportunity to beat Georgia in year one, the Iron Bowl in year one, the Cal game in year two, the Arkansas game in year two. Like, there was clearly an issue, and Coach Freeze, the post game in Missouri, he just looked dismayed, trying to figure out and trying to explain why he can't figure out how to win these games. At some point, it's a culture issue. And in year three, the head coach is the one that's responsible for setting the culture. So when you watch what we all thought was a bad call, we thought Jackson Arnold crossed the goal line there, and Auburn should have been up 17-0. Unfortunately, that's life. Like that's life in the SEC. That's just, you're going to get bad calls in football. Now, Auburn's had a rough year on that, okay? We can all agree on that as well. Like, Auburn has got shafted more often than not this season. It's been above average, But still, you still had a 10-3 lead versus the Georgia Bulldogs at halftime. Before that game played out that way and all of those bad calls happened, before the ball was kicked off versus Georgia, if you were asked by a football genie, hey, take it or leave it, Auburn up 10-3 at halftime, every one of us would have took it in a heartbeat. You completely collapse. You get dismayed about a bad call, and you never recover. I think Anquan Fagans will be a great player, so this is not anything on him. It's a bigger culture thing. Anquan Fagans makes an interception last night, going to get the ball to Auburn in decent field position with under 3 minutes to go and one more shot to win the game. And after making a great play, make an interception, he fumbles the ball right back to Kentucky, and it's first down for the Wildcats. That's the Hugh Freeze era in a nutshell. One step forward, 2 steps back. The penalties, an undisciplined football team. Unable to put together 4 quarters of competent offense. For so long, it was, you were coming out and you were saying, man, Auburn looks like they don't even have a plan on offense. What is the game plan here? What are we trying to do? What is the identity? And then there was like this little 4-week stretch this season where Auburn started the game looking like they had a plan, looking like they had an identity. And then after the script was up and the other team adjusted, then it fell apart. It's like, man, you can just never, the pieces never all fall into place. We can never get it all to work. It's always something. We had Alabama dead to rights in the Iron Bowl, and we put the wrong number 0 out there on a punt return. That's Little League, man. Lack of attention to detail, lack of organization. You put Coy Moy out there and you thought it was Keontae Scott. Lack of communication. Didn't know that Keontae Scott was in the injury tent getting checked out. Should have just put back a guy back there with sure hands. No return, just field it. Well, we didn't know. How do you not know that in that moment? It's the Iron Bowl, man. You got to know that. That's your job. The Auburn head coach, and you messed that up in that game? It's wild. There was like 4 other mishaps in that game. And at the time, as gut-wrenching of a loss as that was, we felt like, okay, well, look, we never even probably should have been that close with this Alabama team in year one. And yes, we gave it away, but boy, when we get talent, when we get the guys in here, we'll close that gap, and it won't even be close like that. It won't even come down to that. That was the sentiment at the time. It only got worse. It only got worse. And that example of that mishap and the mishaps in the fourth quarter of that game, they weren't anomalies. They weren't exceptions to the rule. It ended up being something that we saw on a frequent basis with Hugh Freeze as head coach. So, offensive guy, offensive-minded head coach, and the offense was a unit holding the team back. A guy that was supposed to develop QBs, get the quarterback position for Auburn back into the 21st century, missed on all of them. Culture issues. Auburn already had a culture problem. Since Auburn lost to Florida State in the national championship, every year from that year on, Auburn has lost at least 4 games. In times like these, there's a certain amount of Auburn fans, there's a certain crowd that'll come out and say, we deserve this for firing Gus. And you'll see some national media people say that. What they won't tell you is that Gus's last 7 years at Auburn, he lost at least 4 games every year, and that he was an offensive-minded head coach that was really riding the backs of really good defenses. They leave all those details out. But the reality is that ever since that year, 12-2 year with the kick six and the prayer at Jordan Hare, Auburn has lost at least 4 games. Now, in the previous 4, it's been just straight up losing seasons, at least 7 losses. And it feels like we're very much on the track to do that again for a 5th year. So there was a culture issue at Auburn, a losing culture problem, because you've been losing games for a long time. The hope was that Hugh Freeze could come in and reset that. And he didn't. It was more of the same in a lot of ways. Even more frustrating. Because when the Harsin ship was sinking, Auburn was just getting blown out. When the Gus thing was coming to its end, Auburn was just not scoring enough points in the big games. Like, every game played out the same. Versus like Georgia and Bama, like, defense played well, couldn't score enough points. 8-4, 7-5, here we come. That's what it was. And that got played out. But with Hugh Freeze, he found new ways, his teams found new ways to lose every single week. It was always catastrophic. You were looking at it like, what? You want to give the other team props. I want to give the other team props a lot of times. But in the Auburn football case over the past 2 or 3 years, I haven't been able to give the other team their props in victory because most of the time I felt like Auburn lost the game. Another issue that plagued Hugh Freeze in his time at Auburn and has plagued this Auburn program for over a decade. Piss poor offensive line continues to haunt this program. You cannot win in this league if you do not win up front. Auburn ran the ball well with Jarquez Hunter last year. A lot of that's Jarquez Hunter, honestly. But I will say the O-line last season, solid in run blocking. But they were bad in pass pro. And they're really bad at it. I mean, we got sacked on so many third downs yesterday in max protect. How does that even happen? Crazy. Jake Thornton has been here for 3 seasons. He has not developed. Connor Lew is the only high school recruit we're seeing doing anything down there. And I'll tell you, this was by far Connor Lew's worst season at Auburn. this year. He wasn't playing all that great. He was at least up and down. He was playing great sometimes and not playing well in others. But I don't think he was reaching his max potential. I don't think he was developing at the rate that a talent like that should develop under Jake Thornton. Is Xavier Chaplin all of a sudden bad? Sure, the SEC is a step up from Virginia Tech. Okay. Maybe he wasn't going to be as good at Auburn as he was at Virginia Tech. But the gap is being this large, I'm going to put that on coaching. I'm going to put it on Jake Thornton because there's a large enough sample size now to see that. Everyone talks about Diego Pavia being undefeated versus Hugh. Diego Pavia coming into Jordan Stadium with New Mexico State. Auburn got their ass kicked in the trenches versus New Mexico State, particularly up front on the offensive line. New Mexico State's defensive line did whatever it wanted with that Auburn O-line. Unacceptable, period. Just shoved Auburn around for 4 quarters. The same way Kentucky did last night. What's the plan with Kel Ellis here? Why was a 17-year-old, why'd you put him through that last night? It was very obvious halfway through that football game, he wasn't up to the task. And that's not a knock on him. Kel Ellis, I think he'll develop into a fine player. I'm not mad at him a lick. This is not, I'm looking at the coaches. We don't have anybody else ready to roll when Connor Lew gets hurt at center. We got to go with the early enrollee at center in the SEC. Sure, Connor Lew started when he was a freshman. Sure, he did when Avery Jones got hurt. He'd also done 4 years of high school. This kid's supposed to be a senior this year in high school. He'd be getting ready for high school playoffs right now. He went up against a nose tackle last night in Kentucky that's probably going to play in the NFL. Y'all didn't think about that being a problem during the week? The broadcast did. SEC Network, when the game started, they said, here's something to watch. We got a guard, a defensive lineman that's going to get drafted going up against the youngest player in Division I college football. They saw it coming. They had the graphic ready and made for it, called it the key matchup of the game. And they were right. And Auburn had nothing for it. Didn't see it coming, and then when it did come, they weren't prepared. They had no pivot. They just kept him in there. It's not fair to him, and it's not a recipe to win a football game. I don't think that Jackson Arnold's a great quarterback. I don't think Ashton Daniels is a great quarterback. My goodness, how can you say anything about them last night? They had no time to throw the football. Hugh's talking about we got to let it go. I'm sure, man, if we could go back and watch the film, there's times where they got to let it go. Sure. They're probably shell-shocked, dude, from whatever that's supposed to be up front. A lot of money down there. And they can't stop anything. Awful in pass protection all season long. And got worked in the run game last night as well. Our offensive line got their ass kicked. There were some plays last night where there was 3 or 4 Auburn Tiger offensive linemen on their butt at the end of the play. I saw Mason Murphy get thrown one time off of my camera. Like, I got a big screen, big flat screen like everybody else, you know, and he just goes flying off my TV. I said, where'd Mason Murphy go? It's hard to run any offense with an offensive line that's as bad as this one is. It was supposed to be the strength of the team. Hugh Freeze told us before the season started it was going to be the strength of the team. I don't think he was lying intentionally. I think he believed that. Shows you just how far off he is from knowing what good football is at this point in his career. think there was a time when Hugh Freeze knew what good football was and could identify it and get his team to it. That's clearly past. And as we sit here today and he's fired, I never thought, well, I won't even say that. I wasn't 100% sure. I never pounded the table and demanded and died on the hill that Hugh Freeze was going to get Auburn back to national championships and competing for natties. But I thought there was a floor that was much higher than this. And I was wrong. I was way wrong. Because the floor offensively, I don't see how we can get it any lower than we scored one touchdown versus the two worst defenses in the SEC. I really think that what we saw last night was maybe the worst offensive performance in my lifetime. And I know Auburn's thrown out some stinkers over the years on offense. I can't think of Auburn throwing out stinkers like that with the weapons they have. There have just been some bad, the Kyle Frazier experiment, Barrett Trotter, Clint Mosley, okay. But those offenses didn't have what this offense has in terms of just blue chip ratio. So, bad QB play, no QB development, bad offensive line play, no development on the offensive line, culture issues. I think these are all the things that ultimately have led to this 15-19 record and got us here. And also lack of organization. Lack of organization on the offensive side of the ball. The process. The way the game plans are drawn up during the week. It's not a recipe for success. You wonder why it looks like that on Saturday? It's because that result, the 3 points versus Kentucky result, is getting put in place on Tuesday. Process is poison. The process is shattered. It's not good football. There's miscommunications all over the place. Quarterbacks, 4th downs versus Georgia, thinks we're doing one thing. Running back thinks we're doing another. O-line thinks we're doing another. All because the coach put a play in that wasn't practiced, and then he didn't hang around in the meeting to make sure that it was implemented properly. And that the proper audibles were discussed if we saw certain fronts from Georgia. Then the quarterback argues with the head coach all week in the media. And the quarterback was right. Isn't that something? A lot of people owe Peyton Thorne an apology. I've always said on this show, I think Peyton Thorne was an average college quarterback. You could have made him slightly above average. But Hugh Freeze even coached that down. I think he could have. I think a good coach. Well, I think if Peyton Thorne is on Ole Miss this year, I think they're fine. I think he has a lot better numbers and plays a lot better than he did last year at Auburn. Do y'all disagree with that? Let's get to some of these comments, man. Got a good crowd in here. Smash that thumbs up button. Terry the Tiger says, hell yeah, guys. Nightmare is over. I hope so. This particular nightmare is over. I hope that the next hire is the right guy and what Auburn fans have been put through these past 5 years. And for me personally, again, before the losing season started, you had 7 straight years of at least 4 losses. That, for me, was even beneath expectations. No, I'm not saying that 8-4 is a bad record, right? But when it's your record every year, at minimum, and then there's some 6 and 6s and 7 and 5s mixed in with that, that's what you're doing at least, that's the ceiling. 4 losses, that's when I have an issue with it. 7 years of that. So, yeah, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree, well over a decade of, well, it was mediocre, and now I think it's just dog crap. It's just awful. It's not even mediocre anymore. Mediocre is average, right? Auburn's not that. Auburn's not that. This has been a very, very long nightmare, Terry, and I hope it's over. I hope Auburn gets this one right because, man, this Auburn fan base deserves it. Reed says, reportedly only getting half his buyout. Justice. Wow. Where's that being reported? I'm not saying you're not true. I just haven't read that. And I haven't read a whole lot of articles or anything like that. I've been getting ready to do this, kind of been waiting on this. We were live this morning. I was trying to get some errands knocked out, anticipating this news still might come. So, yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. I wonder if that was like an agreement, that's very, very interesting. Thank you for the information. Rigger says the red flags were there season 1 when the plan for UGA was use Peyton for running and Robbie for passing. Yeah, man. Yeah, just no idea how to use their abilities. For sure. For sure, Riggerspoon. You're correct. I agree with you. There was a lot of red flags from the jump. Riggerspoon signing up to become a YouTube member today. Let's go, buddy. Definitely going to have some fun member content coming out for you guys this week. Welcome to the family, bro. Ben says, good riddance to Hugh. All shucks. We love our rivals, Freeze. Yeah. Yeah, man. The all shucks mentality. We're close. Well, I just got to get one of these things to bounce my way. And it got old. It got old. Auburn needs a dog, man. Auburn needs a freaking dog to come in that doesn't make any excuses. And yeah, the football stuff's the most important, right? Like the scheme's got to be right, all that stuff. But from a culture standpoint, Auburn needs, there's a certain kind of mindset I think Auburn needs to weed out the poison that is this loser-ass culture that Auburn has become. One step closer, Ben. We are. Got to get it right. But the main problem has been removed. What an indictment it's going to be if Auburn comes out and beats Vandy. Look, I'm not predicting that to happen. But you have seen the interim head coach bump across the country this year. What an indictment that would be. Could you imagine the Diego Pavia jokes Hugh's going to get? Like, Auburn just had to get rid of Hugh to beat Diego. Hugh, if Auburn beats Vanderbilt, do not get on the internet, bro. Ben, thank you for the $4.99 super chat, buddy. Ryan says, letting Freeze go just doesn't feel great. He got great players in our offense and failed them, failed the fans, failed at his expectations. Yeah, it doesn't feel good because whenever you fire a head coach, obviously things aren't going well. So, yeah, it sucks, man. It sucks. I'm disappointed. I had hopes. Not disappointed that we made the decision today. I'm disappointed that it ended up here. If we had to have a conversation in like 7 or 8 seasons down the line where it's like, all right, man, he was winning 8, 9 games. Can he take us to the next level? I thought maybe we would end up there eventually, like we did with Gus. But I thought there was going to be a elevation, a raising of the bar. Wasn't sure if it was going to be risen up all the way. But I didn't think it was going to get lowered. And, Blake was doing the show. Me and Blake were doing the show together at the time. And shout out to Blake. Love him. We were doing the show, and we did deep dives into the numbers. I remember one episode we did because remember Hugh made the quote, I turned things around quickly. So we looked into it. We looked at the team that Hugh Freeze was coaching in his first year at that program, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, and Liberty. We looked at their offense the year before Hugh Freeze, and then we looked at the offense the first year he showed up, compared all the stats. And all 3 stops, major jumps in every category. And we said, look, here's all the evidence. Didn't work here. It didn't work here. And I don't envy the people that have to hire these head coaches. Because, man, that's a difficult process. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like there's some luck involved in it. Right guy, right place, right time. But yeah, I agree with you that it doesn't feel great because we never wanted to be here. We never wanted to be here. Teresa says, I don't think Jackson is much better, but he doesn't have more chemistry and experience with the offense. Save Ashton Daniels' red shirt so he can be a backup again because he's a solid backup choice. It'll be interesting to see how the remaining offensive staff handles red shirts and everything like that. How does DJ handle them? You know, I mean, he is the acting head coach. It'll be fun. The press conference tomorrow is going to be fun. Like, I'm looking forward to doing it, reacting to it, and doing an episode, right? I want to see that. What kind of energy does DJ bring? I'm sure he's going to try to pump some juice into the program for sure. I mean, you see how enthusiastic he is on the sidelines and everything like that. I think he's definitely going to try to bring some of that. And Auburn needs that. Auburn needs that at the podium, man. Head coach sets the tone, bro. Our head coach been up there looking like he lost his dog for a year and a half. Like he knew he didn't have the answers. And it was only a matter of time before the teacher figured it out. And it sucks. It sucks. Get a few more of these comments. Can we please not get any coaches with ties to Arkansas State? Yeah, I think that pipeline for Auburn, maybe it's time to do something different. Isn't Butch Jones at Arkansas State right now? Could you imagine? We literally got worse every year with Hugh Freeze. 6-6, 5-7, and on the way to 4-8. Yep, the talent got better. And the results got worse. Crazy. Crazy, Teresa. Will says the bar was somehow lowered. I thought it was pretty bad. I thought Harston had put this program down pretty bad. And on the field, Hugh Freeze took it a step lower. Now, off the field, obviously Hugh did a great job of recruiting and acquiring talent, but I also think that Auburn has learned and now is in position to be successful moving forward. I think Auburn as an institution knows what it takes from an NIL perspective to get a good roster now. And you see the hiring of Will Redmond and giving Will Redmond an assistant GM and giving those guys staffs, giving the guys a complete staff to work with. So I think the infrastructure at Auburn is set up to win and set up to compete and set up to still acquire top-notch talent. So, yes, the bar was lower. The results on the field were lower than what we've ever seen at Auburn. Dating back to somebody sent me the thing today with Earl Brown or some guy from, back before TV was invented. So in modern Auburn history, it's been the worst that it's ever been. I will say, I think that what Hugh Freeze did from a recruiting effort and breathing life back into that side of Auburn has kind of shown the administration what we can do. We can sign top 10 classes, okay? And this is how you do it. And I think that the way the game is going, you don't even have to have a head coach in the future that's as good a recruiter as Hugh Freeze. I think you got to have a guy that players want to come play for. But proof of concept, like what you have on the defensive side, Jacquez Wilkes, 4-star edge, top 200 prospect. Jacquez Wilkes said, my commitment's not affected at all. He said, Auburn's doing exactly what I want them to do on defense. He said, I want to come and play in a good defensive system and do my thing. Now, does that hold up if a new coach comes in and doesn't retain the defensive staff? Very valid questions, right? But the point I'm making here is that with the NIL structure that Auburn has, and you have proof of concept on one side of the ball, it's not, if Auburn hires the right guy, it doesn't have to be this massive rebuild. And if Auburn hires the right guy, there's a way to where Auburn can be successful moving forward where they don't have to have this just grind it out, go get them style recruiter. Because I don't think that's required anymore in this day and age. I think you still got to be a good recruiter. And again, I think you got to be somebody that players want to come play for. Very much like an NFL model. At the end of the day, human nature is human nature, right? Nobody wants to play for a dickhead. Sure. You just saw that at LSU. The main issue at LSU, and yes, there's some football stuff, but they're still winning some games. The main issue over there was the way Brian Kelly was treating people. Auburn knows how to build a roster now. There was a blip in the radar this summer because Auburn thought the rules were actually going to be implemented. And then Auburn, to their credit, Auburn said, well, we have a history here kind of getting the axe if we don't follow the rules, so we're going to try to follow what y'all say are the rules. And then when they saw that they weren't the rules, Auburn said, okay, well, we'll go back to doing what we're doing. And then they promptly signed Womack, Jace Matthews, Jacquez Wilkes, and Zaire. All 4 blue chip guys, as soon as Auburn pivoted its money strategy with the whole rev sharing and all that. So the infrastructure is there at Auburn. You just got to get the right guy in there. And we're going to talk about that a lot. I mean, because it's time to have those conversations, right? And I'll definitely do my research and try to come up with who I think are the best candidates. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what any of us think. We're not going to be the ones in the interview process. The people that are going to be interviewing these candidates that have the inside intel on who they are as men and how they lead their teams and all that kind of stuff, Auburn has to be very intentional in what it's looking for in this head coach. Auburn has to identify what is it going to take to get this program back where it belongs, who are the candidates that have that, and we'll go do whatever it takes to get them. And we're about to get out of here. Sub to the channel. Smash that thumbs up if it's your first time tuning in. The one thing that I'm not going to sit here and listen to, and I will push back on forever, is that this notion that, well, LSU's open, and Florida's open, and Penn State's open, so Auburn might not be able to get their guy. If that's the mindset that the people running Auburn have, Auburn's cooked. And I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying if that's how they're thinking, if they're scared, and obviously they're not because they fired Hugh Freeze, right? So they're willing to enter the market. Auburn's got to behave like what it is. There's a lot of Bama fans trying to troll me online right now by saying, because I said Auburn has to hold itself to the Auburn standard. There's a lot of Bama fans saying, well, what's the Auburn standard? Look, Auburn is not Alabama historically. I would never say that. But Auburn is a top 15 program historically. Every number, every metric backs that up. And Auburn has to behave like a top 15 program again. Terry Bowden, hey, he's got a national championship up on the stadium. Be damned if you think it's legit or not. He won the games. Pad Dye, 1983, they got it up on the stadium. I think that one's a legit national championship. Tubbs, undefeated, 2004. Auburn's claiming the national championship now. I'm not pushing back on it. Went undefeated, played an SEC schedule. Compared to what Oklahoma and USC played that year. Okay. Gene Chizik, national champion. Gus Malzahn, a minute and a half away from being a national champion. That's what? Dye, Bowden, Tubbs, Gene, Gus. That's 5 coaches. That's 5 coaches. Dating back to the early 80s. That either won or competed for national championships at Auburn. All those guys who won SEC championships, competed for multiple SEC titles. So to the troll Bama fans saying, what's the standard? That's the standard. Behave like a top 10, top 15 all-time program, which Auburn is. Behave like that in your coaching search. Whoever you think's the guy, find a way to bring him in here. Don't settle. And Auburn has to get this one right. You can't get this one wrong and do 3 more years of what we just went through. This is a very, very, they're always important, because if you're firing a head coach, then the program's not where it needs to be. So obviously the next hire is important. But when you look at the context of how bad it's been, for how long it's been bad, they got to get this one right, man. They really, really do. So we'll see how it all plays out. What I do know, Auburn's capable. Auburn's capable of competing for playoffs. Auburn's capable. And look, it's a tough schedule. So, like, my expectations, I want to be realistic with those. But Auburn can compete for playoff spots, can compete for national championships. And in years that you don't do that, the floor has got to be higher than 5 and freaking 7. Okay? A lot of people saying we were on. Yeah, I'm well aware of that. That's very common knowledge. Yeah, I do know that. Yeah. The point I'm making is that those Auburn teams competed for national championships. Like, you take the probation away, that's my point. And they're probably national champions, and the school's claiming one. So that's once you get past Harsin, you can go all the way back to Pat Dye for coaches that had Auburn at that level. That's the point being made there. So Auburn can do it, and the game has changed a lot. And yeah, I hear you, bud. I hear you. So the game has changed a lot, and Auburn's still right there. See what Jace Matthews said? Jace Matthews is the 5-star wide receiver. So from Mississippi. And you would definitely expect decommitments to come. Like, that's kind of expected when you fire a head coach. So, but Jace Matthews said, I liked Freeze, but anything to improve the program is great. I like Freeze, but anything to improve the program is great. That's a receiver. That's not even a DJ Durkin defensive-minded guy, right? That's a 5-star wide receiver. He's saying, look, my money's good. I want to play at Auburn. If it helps the program, great. So I'm expecting to see that from defensive players, but to see Jay say that, and he said, hey, I like Freeze, right? He's not knocking him. But he's basically saying that if Auburn goes and gets the right guy, if my NIL deal is the same and I like the offense, I want to go to Auburn and play for Auburn. And that goes back to my point of this new day and age in recruiting. There's a lot of guys that are very talented players that are just kind of sitting on their Florida commitment, waiting to see what Florida does. that if Florida hires the right guy, they're never going to decommit. Or if they hire a guy that can keep them in the boat and keep the excitement up and they like the scheme and all that, I'm sure they'll have some, right? But they have a really good class over there. It wasn't just like mass decommitments when Billy got fired. So there's a possibility that Auburn can keep a lot of this together. And then even if they can't, what does it matter? Because the old grocery and the cook argument. I can have the best groceries in my pantry. If you're giving them to me and expecting me to cook you a gourmet meal, you're going to be disappointed. So it does me no good. Them groceries might as well go to another pantry, right? So as good as some of these players are, it doesn't matter if the head coach can't put them in position to succeed. At Texas A&M, whenever they fired Jimbo, they lost a lot of highly recruited guys. Does it even matter? Did it even matter? Because they just used the transfer portal. They went out and got it. And look at them now. You just got to get it right. Auburn doesn't have A&M resources, but Auburn has plenty of resources to get it right and get it right fast. Ryan, I appreciate you being active in the chat tonight, buddy. Appreciate you tuning in. Ryan says Derek Nix was my nail in the coffin prediction. Yeah, for some of you guys that may not have seen the other episodes, I've talked about how I felt like Jackson Arnold was the final nail in the coffin for Hugh Freeze. Ryan saying he thinks it was Derek Nix. I mean, Ryan, we can't argue that, brother. You know, I think you're onto something there. Kind of feels like Hugh went and got his buddy right there, right? Like he went and got a guy that's just going to say, okay, yeah, sure. And I'm not there every day. I don't know that for sure, but it certainly feels like this is very much Hugh Freeze's offense, and saying that Derek Nix calls plays is like a performative type thing due to his contract situation at Ole Miss and all of that. And how good is Derek Nix, truthfully, right? How good is Jake Thornton? How good has Ben, whatever his last name is, the tight end coach? Like, I'm not sure if this offensive staff at Auburn is even an SEC level offensive staff. And the results probably bear that out, right? The results probably bear that out. So it's they got to blow it up. They have done that. And I was talking about Tommy Bowden and Terry Bowden. Yeah, there's a lot of Bowdens out there. There is a lot of Bowdens out there for sure. For sure. But Auburn had one of them, and he was successful. He was successful for a while. So Auburn can do it, man. Auburn can do it. All right. That's going to wrap up this episode. We will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Uptempo podcast. Didn't even really talk about DJ Durkin and how this whole thing is going to play out for the rest of the year. This is very much just a reaction show to Hugh Freeze getting fired. But DJ will have his press conference tomorrow. I'll probably come on tomorrow afternoon and react to that and any more news that comes out. When head coaches get fired, stories start to come out. You start to hear about things that were going on behind the scenes that maybe weren't the best and all that. We will definitely discuss those as they come out and as they are appropriate. And we will do our, like I said earlier, members be on the lookout. It's about to be Intel season, right? And we'll definitely be dropping some stuff for you guys as well. And thank you for everyone that's gifted memberships today, signed up for memberships. Thank you all for the super chats. Will says, War Damn Eagle. Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate you, Will. Ryan with a War Eagle. Alan with a War Eagle. Thank you, man. I appreciate you boys so much. Appreciate everybody being in here and supporting the show. These are not the best of times to be an Auburn fan, but today was necessary. We had to have it. It had to happen. I'm really glad that I didn't have to record another show with Hugh Freeze as the head coach because if y'all watched this morning, you saw I was just about ready to lose it. Let's see. War Eagle from Free Bag Fresh. Appreciate you, buddy. Well, I'm taking it right back to the beginning because I just finished the War Pour Live, about to enjoy this. Yeah, lots of content. Lots of content out there today for the Auburn fans. We're going to have a lot of content all week. If you did miss the War Reports. I mean, they were live for like 2 hours, man. So go back and watch that. If you're just now tuning in and checking us out, go back and restart that. Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of content, great conversations being had. The Auburn Thaw. Is this my guy, Fire Freeze? Have we changed it? Have we changed the name now? It looks like the same picture. I've been calling you Fire Freeze for a year and a half. So enough Fire Freeze. I just wanted to bring up your your username, brother. There's no reason to be this bad. We have the money, the facilities, the fan base, the location. It's all there. Absolutely. Buddy says, don't give up hope. It's always darkest before the dawn. Yes. Yes. If I know Auburn fans, man, now that this move has been made, the last 2 home games are going to be great atmospheres. And especially the Iron Bowl. These players deserve that. These players deserve us to show up and show out. And I actually, after the Arkansas game last year, I vowed to not come back to Jordan-Hare Stadium with Hugh Freeze as the head coach. I might make my ass up there for the Mercer game because Hugh Freeze ain't head coach no more. And the boys deserve our support. Teresa says, War Damn Eagle. Will has signed up to become a new member. Appreciate you, Will, for sure. Yeah, this is my guy. A lot of War Eagles, as always. What Kendrick Lamar say? We're going to be all right. Big hire coming up for the Board of Trustees. Big hire coming up for John Cohen or whoever in the world makes the decisions around there. We're a sleeping giant. Auburn football is a sleeping giant. It's time for somebody to come wake it up. I will see you guys later in the week. Love you. Thank you so much. War Damn Eagle forever and always. I'm out.